The Housing Assistance Council is a national nonprofit that supports affordable housing efforts throughout rural America. Since 1971, HAC has provided below market financing for affordable housing and community development, technical assistance and training, research and information, and policy formulation to enable solutions for rural communities. Thank you for joining the Emerging Construction Techniques webinar. This is our final installment of the 2023 Smart Building Series, where we've provided attendees with insights and practical knowledge to transform your construction practices. This engaging and informative session will cover the latest trends and advancements in smart building techniques, showcasing real-world examples and case studies from peer organizations. Discover a wide range of topics, including energy efficiency technologies, innovative materials, green building techniques to enhance quality, sustainability, and cost effectiveness of your construction projects. Thank you to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's Rural Capacity Building Program for sponsoring today's event. Now I'd like to welcome today's speakers. Gene Gonzalez has been working in rural affordable housing for more than 3 decades. His extensive experience in colonias includes subdivision development, single-family housing rehab, the development of Section 202 elderly housing, and the 514-516 farm labor housing projects, including asset management over 600 units along the New Mexico, Texas, and Mexico border. Gene has carried out numerous training activities and technical assistance throughout the country where his knowledge of construction, enabling him to teach new smart construction along with passive solar, straw bale, Adobe, and he's bilingual in English and Spanish. Patrick Diller is the Senior Director of Business Development for Pallet, leading the Business Development, Impact, Government Affairs, and Path Forward teams. Mr. Diller's focus is on innovative solutions to housing and homeless crises and innovating how shelter and services are delivered in the time of natural disasters. His team has successfully worked with over 85 cities in 21 states to build over 120 communities, supporting people experiencing homelessness in less than 3 years. He's well experienced in working closely with local, state, and federal government, as well as navigating public-private partnerships and nonprofit sector. Prior to joining Pallet, Mr. Diller led a global health division for the international water product manufacturer, working with NGOs, governments, and ministries of health, and providing private sector to bring access to safe water treatment to over 500,000 people in the developing world. Mr. Diller also spent time over a decade as a real estate broker and consultant, working with financial institutions like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac on distressed asset disposition and foreclosure alternatives. From an early age, the prophecy of his ancestor, Chief Red Cloud, was instilled in him that by the 7th generation, the Ogallala Lakota would be able to understand the words written on treaties, speak the language of the whites, and help the Lakota exist in mainstream society. John's children are the 7th generation, Red Cloud described, and it is with honor in mind that he deliberately chose his next steps. John embarked on a journey that took him away from Pine Ridge, where he received a formal education outside of the reservation. His objective was to gain new skills that would fulfill the prayer of the 7th generation. John knew this sort of journey would provide a fresh perspective with which to see the plight of his people when it came time for his return. Today, John Red Cloud has stepped into his leadership that serves as the RCR, as the Director of Development and Managing Director. His skills in writing and fundraising fortify his roles. With reverence for prayer set forth by his ancestors, John is here to give to the greater good, to stand behind and for renewable energy, sustainable living, land care, and food sovereignty. Henry's oldest son, John, is a former history teacher and development association at Red Cloud Indian School. He's also the development officer for the American Indian College Fund in Colorado. He serves as vice president of the board of directors and as RCR's managing director. Now I'd like to welcome today's speakers. Gene, you are up. And you are muted.
Sorry about that. Well, like Stephanie says, I always have something to say. So I just want to welcome everybody to today's webinar. The title, Emergency Construction Techniques, Overcoming Cost Barriers, Innovative Approaches to Construction and Smart Building Techniques, Volunteers and Sweat Equity Learning Series. Now, this is a mouthful, but it talks about everything that we have been talking about in the last year. This webinar marks the final session for 2023, and we're really happy that everybody's attending today. The learning series, again, Overcoming Cost Barriers, Innovative Approaches to Construction with Smart Building Techniques, Volunteers, and Sweat Equity Learning Series. I promise that's the last time I'll say that. Aim to equip housing professionals and nonprofits and local governments with knowledge and tools to tackle the challenges of rising costs, labor shortages, involving new building techniques. Throughout the 5 webinar series, we have learned from industry leaders, field practitioners, and best practices and recent trends for managing cost strategies, such as fostering skilled labor in your community or implementing construction techniques. For those of you who have attended all 5 webinars, you'll receive a hack certificate attendance, a free trip to Death Valley. No, wait, no free trip to Death Valley. Demonstrating your dedication, you will get a certificate demonstrating your continuous improvement to the industry excellence. Today's webinar, Emerging Construction Techniques, we'll explore real-world examples of peer organization and industry leaders who have efficiently utilized smart building techniques to create.
Video, and so I'm just listening to this, and
Sorry about that, Gene. You can keep going.
That's okay. Create better and more efficient homes. The informative session provides a valuable insight for you to identify and look at emerging techniques that can enhance your current building model. And before we really get into this webinar, I'd like to take a moment just to provide a brief summary of where we've been and what we've done this last year and the different techniques and trainings that we've had. Again, rural housing developers are facing challenges, and general contractors, skilled subcontractors, and COVID-19 has really increased the labor shortage. There's numerous supply chain disruptions, price fluctuations. The learning series hopefully is designed to address these issues through innovative construction techniques, smart building, and implementing a sweat equity component, utilizing volunteers and sharing best practices from peer organizations. The concept learned throughout this series can be applied to your organization and projects. As part of broader exploration to emerging construction techniques, we have done various factory tours and developed many trainings throughout this last year. Example of these have been that Hack has done different trainings, and we've gone to different sites. We went to Las Vegas. We visited the Boxable. For those of you who don't know what Boxable is a recognized leading manufacturer of tiny homes that are shipped out in folding containers, and they unfold, and probably takes about 6 hours for these little structures to unfold. They're at an average of 400 to 600 square feet. We talked about Gigacrete. Gigacrete specializes in high impact, green, and abuse resistant building coatings. This is foam with steel frame, very sustainable. We visited Cardinal Homes. Cardinal Homes is a manufacturing and shipping pre-built part of homes, streamlining the construction process and enabling more efficiency assembling on site. We visited a 3D printing center. This was in Virginia Tech. They did a 3D printing technology, showed us how to do a 3D print building. Very nice. These are just examples of the diversity and approaches of solution that Hack has encountered while working on the various contents. And we hope that this PowerPoint and this webinar helps you advance with your training and also. So without further ado, and I'll cut the gab, now it's our introduction. I'd like to pass it over to Steve Diller from Pallet Shelter. He will be the first presenter. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Here we go. Now I can see the PowerPoint. Let me just take control here. One moment. All right. Well, thank you all for having me. My name is Patrick Diller. I am the Senior Director of Business Development for Pallet. We are an innovative shelter construction company, and we're the leader in rapid response shelter villages across the United States. And excited to kind of share more about what we do and what's innovative within our technologies and what we do. We've been around since 2016, and our founders are first and foremost general contractors and developers here in the city of Seattle. Generally, where we're located north of Seattle in Everett, Washington. And they saw the cost and time associated with building permanent structures and permanent housing. And as the streets continued to build up with people living on the streets, and we saw further escalation in disasters and things like people having to be housed in the Superdome post-Katrina and other natural disasters occurring, and then hearing challenges of workforce housing as well. It was kind of the culmination of all of that led to kind of the design and the idea behind Pallet. And what we do is build, let's see, it's not advancing, one moment, there we go. There we go. I'll do this. So we believe that permanent structures and permanent housing is the goal, but we know that it's too expensive and takes too long to construct. So that's where the idea for Pallet came from. So all of our units are built in factory, but assembled on site. So it's kind of a combination between some traditional construction methods and manufactured housing methods. We build individual panels, ship them to site. So the idea is we can fit about 30 of these on a truck, so it reduces shipping costs, which allows us to not necessarily need to set up individual factories across the country, and provides for better efficiency and cost effectiveness on the logistics side. And then we assemble on site, and our structures can go together in less than an hour, and require minimal tools to do so. You can see they go, the foundation the floor has the foundation built into it. So there is no need for any type of foundation. There's some examples here of wood foundations that have been built to level the units in different places based on the ground and what's available. But we have sites where these go on any kind of surface available, as long as it's flat. They can be attached to the ground for to meet high wind loads and other structural requirements as well, but then can be rapidly deployed. These are a few just different examples of our sites across the country. The larger photo is in Burlington, Vermont. We also have a site there on the upper right that is from the city of Los Angeles. It was a wedge-shaped lot that was left over from a transit project that was being done, and it allowed us to use an otherwise unusable piece of property to house up to 40 individuals on this site, and do it in a cost-effective way and in a very rapid fashion. So we were able to work with the city to build this site in just a matter of weeks. And it allowed the residents of the community and the folks to reclaim the park that was across the street from this site that had been taken over by folks experiencing homelessness in an encampment. And they were able to clear that encampment, move folks into this site, and further improve the community. And then the one on the bottom right is in Tulalip, Washington here. This was our 100th site that we had built. It's on tribal land, and we're able to reutilize a piece of property that previously had been used for active drug users and used as a trap house, and they were able to reclaim the property, convert the house that's there into a services center, and provide shelter and housing for about 20 individuals here on this particular site. First and foremost, Pallet's a workforce development company. So the reason that we're in this space and what we do is really about our people, and not so much the product, and the product's a byproduct of that. So the majority of our staff here have lived experience in either homelessness, incarceration, or addiction recovery, and they've influenced the model severely, influenced the model of what we do, how we do it, and the products that we deploy. The idea of our shelter systems is that they are rapid, but also temporary. So we don't want this to become permanent housing for anybody, whether it's for workforce or homelessness or disaster response. The idea is provide a safe, temporary, dignified space for people to either accomplish the goals that they have, whether that is in agricultural workforce or oil and gas or construction workforce, but also for folks to be able to transition back and reintegrate into society. To do that, we focus on community. So all of our sites are set up in a community setting and have to meet our dignity standards, which require supportive services, access to hygiene facilities, access to transportation, safety and security around the site for the residents, and access to food and water on the site. So the idea is not whether it's a farmer setting up a site for his workers or for use in homelessness. The idea is not just put up a bunch of these and let people come and go and live in them, that there's truly a community built around this. We've now built, this is a little bit old, I believe we're up to over 120 sites now in about 22 or 23 states, and over 4,000 shelters deployed across the United States and now into Canada as well. And we've worked in over 85 cities across the US, everything from your large urban centers to smaller rural communities as well. Most of our sites have been set up as temporary, but also due to the homelessness crisis across the country have yet to come down. So even though they're temporary sites, they're meant to be temporary for folks living in them, but durable enough structures that they can be up for a long period of time and cycle many people through them. We've had a lot of positive outcomes out of our sites. We're seeing things like in Vancouver, Washington, 25 and 30% drops in police officer calls within a certain radius of the site. Lots of folks transitioning into permanent housing, employment referral services, crime reductions up 20, 30%, sometimes even higher. And really high rates of moving people into permanent housing from these sites. And so overall, when you provide housing and wraparound services, it reduces your actual overall need for other services like police and fire, which becomes a benefit to the entire community. And I won't go too deep into our products. We're actually launching a whole new product line that is based on the feedback we've received over the last 5-6 years of having these shelters out in the world. Those products will actually go together faster. They have higher structural ratings. I believe we can hit up to 200-mile-an-hour wind gusts with them. And just overall comfort improvements and energy efficiency improvements across the product line. But generally, as you can kind of see, we have a 64 square foot shelter that's meant for single or double occupancy. All of our shelters have ability for heat, air conditioning, electric connection so that people can charge their cell phones or a computer or or run the lights inside or things like that. Beds, mattresses, safety features like a secondary egress, fire extinguisher, smoke detector and CO monitor. So really meant to be a very quick, rapid, turnkey solution. This particular one has a lower level of insulation. It's about an R2, and then our larger unit, we can also do it on the smaller units as well, but this is about an R8 in terms of the insulation in the shelter unit. So we have a 100 square foot unit here. Got 4 windows across the front. They're all openable, ventable as well, and then heat and air conditioning there as well. And then we expanded the product line to include hygiene facilities. We have bathrooms. We have ADA accessible restrooms as well. We do laundry facilities, and then we also do larger community structures that allow for whatever is needed: a dining hall, community gathering, food distribution, on-site daycares, whatever is needed on that site, and those are 400 and 800 square foot units. So what that all looks like in practice here, I'll share a couple of just different case studies, primarily focused around homelessness. This Sonoma project also was done by their emergency management group, and it went up from the first phone call that we got saying that they needed shelter to when we had this community up and open was about 9 days. And this was done a little over 3 years ago, and it's still operating today. They moved hundreds of people off of the streets and into stable permanent housing through this particular site. And let's see, in the city of LA, we have now about 15 sites across the city, various different locations across the city, everything from about 40 units all the way up to about 115 unit sites. And they've all been used in very different areas, it's very creative in terms of land use, and using things like street vacations or underutilized properties to be able to come in and do this type of a thing, as well as sites that are slated to be developed into permanent housing, but you have 4 or 5 years in California for entitlements and permitting and all of those things to come to, and funding and putting together the capital stack all coming together, which gives us an opportunity to shelter people today and get folks off of the streets today. This is in San Jose, California, where we set up on county property in front of an old city hall building. This is a site specific to families experiencing homelessness, and it's completely run off grid. So it's run by 2 solar arrays, as well as some backup generators, and then shower and toilet trailers that get serviced multiple times throughout the week. Boston, Massachusetts. This is on the outskirts of Boston at a hospital, state hospital facility. We were able to set up a small community there that is taking folks off the street, helping them through the addiction recovery process, and moving people much more cost effectively off of the streets and into recovery. And in Vancouver, Washington, kind of a suburb of Portland, Oregon, we have a number of sites there now. Lots of folks moving off of the streets into permanent housing, as well as big reductions that we're seeing in police and fire calls due to having these sites up and people getting their basic needs met. And then lastly, Columbia, South Carolina, another site that went up fairly recently that's been very successful. And that one opened in less than 90 days from when we originally talked to them to when the city was able to find the land, find the funding, get the permitting done, and get these sites up and folks housed. And we see similar types of use cases in both workforce housing, and then we've done some disaster response around wildfires and things as well across the West to get folks that have been evacuated or lost their housing into stable, secure shelter. And I will pause there and open up for any questions. I do see one here about energy efficiency. As I mentioned, they range from an R2 to an R8 currently. It is a little bit misleading because the units are small and we use a reflective material, and so they actually heat and cool pretty efficiently. And the other piece is that a lot of times the folks aren't there throughout the day as they're looking at employment or other services or things, and so it's really only at night that they're using those either heat or air conditioning, and so it's pretty effective versus when you're trying to keep your home or a larger home at a consistent temperature throughout the day. The units range in cost from about $7,500 for a real basic unit all the way up to about $15,000, fully loaded, shipped, setup, with heavier insulation and larger heaters and those things for colder climates. Great. Any other questions?
I'm sorry.
Well,
If anyone would like,
oh, go ahead.
anyone would like to ask a verbal question, if you want to raise your hands, otherwise going once. Okey-dokey. Sorry, go ahead, Patrick.
Oh, I was just gonna hand it off unless there was a question there. Yes, I will drop my information into the chat here. We're currently able to produce a couple thousand units a year, and we our new product line that we're launching will get us up to the capacity to build about 40 units per day out of our within our current capacity, and then easily scalable at low cost to more factories if needed. So for things like dealing with refugee crises or larger disaster situations where we need thousands at scale, we can react and respond to that. We work primarily with government organizations. We also work with nonprofits. So I'd say about 80% of our sales are government, 20% are direct to nonprofits. The government entities then contract with the nonprofit service provider to operate the sites. But that's we do work with both. We don't specifically have a minimum order. We usually say kind of the 6 to 10 unit range, just because of the efficiency of shipping and having to get a team out to set them up and those types of things. Most sites are financed either in the nonprofit sector by donations or grants, and in the public sector through different HUD programs or FEMA programs that exist currently. ARPA was a big source of funding over the last few years. CARES Act prior to that. We ship direct from our factory here in Everett, Washington. Yep, and thanks, Brendan dropped in his information in there, or you can also check out our website, palletshelter.com. The time frame in which people stay in our shelters ranges. It could be for a farmer, it could be a growing season, which could be anywhere from just a couple of weeks to a couple of months. In disaster, it can be anything from very short term to up to a year. And on the homelessness side, the average is about 3 to 6 months, but a lot of that depends on the individual situation, the throughput, opportunities into permanent housing, what's available. We also see really high rates of family reunification. So this idea that we need a housing unit for every person living on the streets, we've proven that to be very incorrect. A lot of folks that are currently unhoused have somewhere to go. They just need to face or deal with the issues that they have in order to move back home. They belong to someone, they belong somewhere, they've come from a home, and this helps them get back to that state. Was there a hand up?
Yeah, Paul David from Graham County, Arizona. Do you, once you construct those, can they also be knocked down and shipped again, reused, or are they a one-time use?
Yeah, absolutely. No, they're meant to come up and go down. They go down just as quick as we can put them up. So we have a lot of sites that we have relocated sites or taken sites down and stored them for until they were redeployed. So we've done that a number of times as well.
So is there a market or an opportunity to purchase used? I know that your business model is building new and installing new, but is there a secondary market?
There has not been yet, because as I mentioned, most of our work has been in the homelessness space, and we haven't solved that problem across the country. So most of our sites aren't coming down, or if they're coming down, they're getting relocated. And so there hasn't been a secondary market yet. We are looking at leasing models or other potential models that could be beneficial, especially for other use cases like migrant crisis along the border or disaster response or things like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then on-site management security for homelessness, we require our customers to, so we contractually require them to have a service provider and to provide security. And that can look a few different ways, whether that's the service provider providing security, whether that is a third-party security agency, and it can use all of our sites are fenced in some way, and with the idea that, you know, only the residents of the individual units are allowed on site, which creates which stops the sites from becoming problematic or trap houses or anything like that. Great. Well, thank you. I think that's all the questions here, and we put our contact info into the chat if anybody has any other further questions, but I'll hand it over now.
Great. Thank you very much for that presentation. Happy to be here today. Great to be occupying this space with everyone here in the room. My name is John Red Cloud. I serve as the managing director of Red Cloud Renewable. We are a 501c3 based on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. And one of our program pillars is around sustainable building. So kind of a broad term, but for us, this means addressing this systemic crisis, you know, that's been on the reservation, that's kind of plagued us for as long as I can remember. You know, many of the homes on the reservation are dilapidated mobile homes, or, you know, really poorly insulated and in terrible shape, stick-built homes. So there's many people who live under a roof, and their home ownership continues to be a challenge for people on the reservation. Median household incomes are just not where they need to be. They're, you know, around $10,000. So it's difficult for a family unit to obtain a home on the reservation. They're faced with the unique challenge of, you know, not be most traditional financial institutions will not be able to place a lien on federal land just because of the status of it. So it makes a unique situation for Native Americans who do own land, but are just not able to leverage that as collateral with a traditional banking system. So with our project here, we have partnered with a nonprofit out of Massachusetts called In Our Hands, where they have kind of refined the cellular concrete technology. I've heard it referred to as like foamcrete. The shape of them there is like a dome shape, so they'll call them dome homes as well. The one that's here on the screen is down at the Red Cloud Renewable Energy Center, and it's about a little under 400 square feet of living space. It has a 16-foot diameter. So that's the current, that one there, the current iteration has an 18-foot diameter, and then there's a loft on top. So those of you who are doing the rapid fire math, you know, the pi r squared for a circle area, there's a secondary loft on this one here in the photo, and then the current iteration where the bottom floor is 254 square feet, and then the loft area up top is 196 square feet. So together, that's 450 square feet of living space there. Let me get to the next slide here. I'll show you. Let's see, am I able to navigate to the next slide? I'm not sure.
Hit the tight control button up at the top.
Okay, I thought I had done that. Yep, it's not showing me. I thought I had taken control, but apparently not. Sorry about that. Technical difficulty.
I can advance the slide for you. If you just give me a heads up, I'll.
Yeah. Okay, so as I'd mentioned, the median household income on the reservation, not that great. So we're looking at on the left-hand side there, that is a family, that mobile home there probably built in the 60s, late 60s or early 70s, and that's very common. Not and on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in the Great Plains area, the extreme temperatures of the winter this past Christmas, we were using the Fahrenheit scale, -20. And then in the winter times, in the summertime, not uncommon to get upwards of triple digits. So you can see that the home situation there for the family there, again, not a one-off at all. Not and then on the right hand side, this belonged to a gentleman named Arthur, and I went out to his home and I was heartbroken. I looked at his home. He lives off grid. He has no water. There's a propane tank off to the left, and he hauls his own water, and he has an outhouse there, and he lives alone. He's probably 80 years old, but very independent, probably one of the toughest old men I've ever met in my life. Chops his own wood, burns wood, just a resilient man. And he was proud of the fact that he lived on his own home, on his own land. So he did those improvements on his own, kind of put siding up right there. And, anyhow, his name's Arthur, and he is the first person on our list to provide one of these dome homes with. Next slide, please. Our technology, again, it's not brand new. It's called cellular concrete, so it's 80% air and 20% concrete. And we've had this looked at by Massachusetts engineering firm, and then one in New Mexico engineering firm, where they've ran all their litany of tests and stress tests, and it passes all for a human domicile. So this is a panoramic view of our campus, and you'll see the two domes kind of there on the left, and the machine on the right is the one that is actually mixes and pours and does all the hard work. So we discovered that to construct a dome, the nonprofit cost is what we call it, is about $25,000. And the great thing about these domes are they're hyper efficient. They're very solid. They're about 12 to 15 inches thick, the walls, and within a couple years they become carbon neutral. And on the reservation and other areas that are prone to high winds, they are definitely tornado proof, pest proof, fireproof, mold proof. And with a mortgage like this, let's say a 20 to 30 year fixed mortgage, running the math, you can have a reasonable, even on a fixed income, less than $500 mortgage, maybe $300-400, and that's reasonable for families on the reservation. There are currently 2 mobile home providers just off the reservation who do provide single wides, and I talked to a CDFI on the reservation, and they're saying they have people there with $100,000 mortgage for a 3-bedroom single wide mobile home. A double wide mobile home, $250,000. So as I was mentioning, that they are just poorly insulated. They're not as efficient as a stick-built home, and many of them, just because of where they are on the reservation, like the wind-swept plains they call it, some of them have tipped over. That's a true story. So we hope this solution here, showing the pros and cons of the cellular concrete versus a single wide mobile home, and it creates that intergenerational wealth, because the home is not on wheels, and that's kind of a new thing for tribal members. Next slide, please. So the very first prototype, this one here, was a small one. It was a 14 foot, so not very much, but it was something that we needed to kind of show ourselves that we knew how to build it. We knew how to train a workforce around it. And this one is still there. It sits on the property of the Red Cloud Renewable Energy Center on the reservation. And we had found out, we stuck a temperature sensor outside, and this past winter, when I mentioned the -20 in December, on the Fahrenheit scale. On the interior, the temperature was about 55, close to 60 degrees. And it was really amazing, being that it was only a small 900-watt space heater, that was keeping the entire property kind of warm there. And, that in itself, not very much. I mean, and when you have a family, somebody's doing dishes, somebody's walking around making the bed, each of us as humans create British thermal units, or BTUs. And we also discovered by doing the interior work, some of the carpenters that were in there, they turn the heater off in the wintertime because they're working around and they're generating heat. And it's kind of being stored inside there. And on the flip side, that it remains cooler in the summertime. So this is on our property, and my dad, Chief Henry Red Cloud. That is a prototype home that we show to folks when they come, and that way they can see it. They can walk inside, feel the walls, feel the different temperature from the inside and the outside. And again, going back to the cost with labor and parts, about $25,000, even with the appliances. They have on-demand hot water tank right there. It's under the sink, and there's a shower area there as well. And this is an east-facing view. Next slide, please. So we have this idea on the reservation. The Lakota people value this extended kinship system called the Teoshpai. And what it is not uncommon to have grandma and grandpa there, maybe a couple of their children, and then they have children, and they all like to live within basically walking distance from each other, and these goes back for generations, back to whenever kind of the tribes were roaming the plains. They would form sub bands within the larger tribe, and each would be with a certain group of families that would kind of hang out together, winter together, summer together. And this concept is still very much alive today. So with this rendering here, this shows what it would look like for, this sort of home. And let's say each of them is around 450 square feet. We times that by 8. We're talking about a fair amount of square footage, and the family gets to stay together. It's a very tradition and language is passed down orally. It's not so much a written language, and this kind of allows families to continue that concept of living together as a multi-generational family, and these dome concepts really permit that. So this is just an artist's rendering of what one looks like, with them fully connected. Next slide, please. We have a tabletop model that we set up at community fairs, powwows, cultural events. And this is basically what it looks like, kind of like the Barbie house. So we took this is like if you were to take the top of the dome off, you can have that bird's eye view of what the dome looks like on the inside. Give a good, good sense of how thick the walls are, and the things, it's a, as is with tiny living and some of the movements that are out there, you're trying to steal space wherever you can. So this is going to be, again, keeping families warmer in the wintertime, cooler in the summertime, and providing something far more energy efficient, than the traditional mobile homes that are just more widely used. But again, families are spending insane amounts of money on utility bills on the reservation. Next slide, please. So on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, some of the challenges are real. The numbers, there's a lot of poverty there, a lot of despair, a lot of hopelessness, things of that nature, and not immune. There are certainly, you go to any city in the United States, Denver, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, you're going to have these same homelessness issues, substance abuse, violence, alcoholism. On the reservation, it appears to be more pronounced. just because it's a small rural community. On our reservation, you know, there's just under 50,000 tribal members that are living there, and maybe almost 1,100 homes, and houses are not going up every year. Again, a traditional stick-built home is outpriced for tribal members who just don't have the funds. And the unemployment rate is staggering when you actually think about it. You know, there's that many people are unemployed. The lack of opportunity is simply not there. There's plenty of people who are of that prime working age. Our project here with this dome building is the domes themselves go up relatively quick, within 48 to 72 hours, and then they cure, and then the interior build out, the carpentry work, the plumbing, the electrician work, putting in the appliances, local contractors, putting in the water heater and all that such, that's where the bulk of the work comes in. And we're hoping to create that local workforce who can build these domes and do the interior build outs, do all the, create the stairs, create the loft, you know, all of that construction work on the inside. So this is kind of our hope, is to solve, or at least present a viable solution to some of the tribal leadership who have really seen this. And I haven't seen any movement on that needle. I'm born and raised on a reservation in Pine Ridge. So next slide, please. So this is a kind of a front view of the group that helped kind of build this very first structure on the reservation there, right in the middle with the hat and the green shirt. That's my dad, Chief Henry Red Cloud, and immediately around him are the members of the In Our Hands, which is a 501c3 from Massachusetts. And they came through and said, hey, we kind of know about this cellular concrete technology. We'd like to share it with your family here. We'd like to provide this using your platform here at Red Cloud Renewable to show the reservation, the tribal leadership, what is possible with collaboration with this new construction technology. I mean, it's not brand new, but it's new to the reservation, and hopefully filling in that need for housing stock on the reservation where, again, this intergenerational wealth, this is a new concept. Otherwise, a person lives in a mobile home, let's say grandma or grandpa, and then they pass on. Oftentimes, a mobile home isn't really an asset, but more like a liability in many ways. It's just not energy efficient, and the upkeep, you know, again, these are built in the 60s and 70s. People take pride in their homes. They're sitting on the land, their ancestral land. So these domes, again, they don't have wheels on them. And I think that's a neat concept that is hard to communicate. Coming from the reservation and growing up in a mobile home myself, you know, not having your home on wheels is kind of a new thing. So our partnership and our technology with the cellular concrete domes is really taking off. We've received some funding from some private foundations to support building of the domes, and we can't build them and give them away to all the tribal members that we'd like. So we're working through another funding opportunity with Wells Fargo, the Invest Native initiative, to create a viable path to home ownership for folks and let them know that it is possible to have a home just like this on your own land. And you have to put, you know, as I say, put a little skin in the game, you know, provide the land there and then work out a mortgage with the local CDFI called Lakota Funds. That is our project, our hope that we can show tribal members what is possible and then get people out of those mobile homes, which are, you know, kind of a liability in the winter and summertime where the utility bills are just through the roof. Anyhow, that is my presentation again from Red Cloud Renewable. If anybody has any questions, I can certainly do my best to answer. Thank you. Very, very much. Okay. Yep. I just see some of the comments. So thus far, we've constructed. I see one question there from. We've constructed on our property. There's 2. Currently, we have funding to create 22 of these, and our dome building crew, as we call them, they are finishing up training on a ranch in New Mexico where they are perfecting the idea of the dome. So it's really neat. There's a cool time-lapse video where it shows a dome goes up in 72 hours is how long it takes. So what it is you have these aluminum forms that go around, and then you have this interior bag that's like inflated, and then the cellular concrete is then nested between the forms, and then it's poured in through the top, and then it cures within 72 hours. And this is one of these, we found the raw material just for the dome itself, nothing else, is about $7,000. So that includes the labor, the raw material, $7,000, and then we build them out, and then we can add energy efficient ranges. And our next step is to put solar on these and make them off grid, providing battery. Again, that movement depends on the support of our funders. We're a small grassroots, 501c3. We're not a tribal government. We're certainly tribal people, but we don't.
Sounds like we may have lost John here. Gene, do you do you want to take a look at some of the questions that are coming in? John, it's tough to tell what could be the issue there connectivity wise, but yes, he faded right out. So
Hopefully we can get him back. Gene?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. Let's see. I'm trying to find him.
So I don't know if you can speak to the project at all. Do you know anything about venting for furnaces or fireplaces, plumbing?
Well, it seems to me that everything is off grid, so I think everything is electric. They have the off grid electrical the solar panels. So he mentioned the hot water heater on demand. He mentioned the heating and cooling. That's all on demand. So I mean, there's no vent pipes needed for plumbing and heating and cooling and all that stuff because it's all enclosed and it's closed system. So that the off grid, the solar provides the energy, the electricity, and so you have everything on demand, the heating, the cooling. Water I think is brought in with the tanks. But other than that, like I said, you don't need any plumbing stacks. You don't need anything like that.
So for the foundation, it
see,
looks
what
like
else?
it's on a slab.
Yeah, the foundation looks like it's on a slab, just and then the frame is poured in. I didn't get to see the slide. That's why I didn't get to see all the slides, so I can't say a lot.
It is, there's a lot of positive questions. I wish he was seeing them right now because it is an amazing project in a area that really needs as much help as they can get. Do
Do you have any
Yeah,
idea how
last
many
last year we
units?
were talking about, I have a couple of groups on Pine Ridge, and last year it got down to 30, 40 below. I think we had like 15 or 14 people that froze to death, last year, just, in their trailers because they ran out of heat, they ran out of wood, whatever it may be. So no, it's something that's desperately needed, not only on Pine Ridge, but every other reservation also. So, looking at this one, I mean, it's possible to move it to other reservations. What I like about it is that it seems it's well insulated. I think you can put it up anywhere. If you can put it on Pine Ridge and, and it's heat up, it's energy efficient there, you could probably use it anywhere. I don't know how many people would like to live in a dome house, but you go to
Um,
Taos, if you go to Taos, you find a lot of these. You find a lot of domes, the rammed earth. I think Dennis Weaver built a house out of tires in Taos. You see old Coke bottles. You see all this different stuff that is used in Taos. So, I mean, this is what they used to call an old foam dome house in Taos years ago. But at that time the foam they were using had formaldehyde and was killing everybody, so they quit developing these. So these are something new that's coming back, I think.
do you know how many
If any of
about how
you
many
have
units?
contact info for Red Cloud,
Yeah,
several of
well,
us have asked for that.
yeah,
We can put
we
them in
have
there.
all that.
Thanks.
We'll put all that online for you.
I'm in the middle of it. I was looking for the one to respond to, but there's the page with the contact information of all the staff in the chat. Any idea on how they're financing this? Is this primarily tribal funds, grant money? I remember he mentioned.
Well, he said that he's
Wells
funding it with
Fargo.
he's funding it with Wells Fargo, and he's also funding it with the Dakota Loan Fund. So that's finance on the reservation that's available to tribes only. The Lakota Fund is what he called it.
And I think we have a hand raised, but we're not going to promise to be able to answer your question, Paul, but we'll do our best. Paul, would you like to ask your question? Your hand's up.
Oh, my question was answered in the comments. I was just
Okay.
concerned mostly about the venting but it's marvelous. There's so many positive things about it, and the other comment is that when it's owner built or community built, then there's pride and a feeling of ownership and stewardship. So just a marvelous idea. I hope it catches on, and because the significant problems of people not having any equity in their homes, that creates generational poverty because you can't pass on the value of your home or build it. So anyway, thank you.
Absolutely.
Right.
There's two questions about land, and I think they're both very different, but also illustrate how we have kind of complex issues about land, in a lot of areas. One is about, could it be used on heirs property? And the other one is on community land trusts. Jean, do you have a response to that?
Well, I think right now they could be used on both, depending on the funding. Land trust. I mean, land trust. I think is easier than to build on than it is on the reservation. Land trust is not owned by the tribe. I mean, so you don't have all those requirements and restrictions. But I think either one would be fine. As far as the financing, like I said, you can get into RD, rural development is willing to do some of these. They have the 184 also that's available probably on the reservation if you really want to do some financing. A lot of these units, they're looking at $15,000-$17,000 mortgage. I mean, a 502 correct loan. I mean, I think they would love those because it's a short, small loan. It's fast, so. But we are working with different tribes on trying to bring in the 502 home money onto the reservations to try to make some of these programs available to the tribes.
And I think for the heirs property, I think I would consider this probably akin to a accessory dwelling unit,
Right.
formerly known as like a granny flat for on like an heirs property. So they own a portion of the land. So
But-
I think
but
you
you
could
gotta-
make it work, but
Yeah.
it will be difficult, just like
But you got to remember,
some
every tribe is
comprehensive
different,
instructions.
so every land issues are different depending on what tribe you're trying to work with. And then, like
Ayers
I
is
said, that
tribal.
it's they're not all going to be the same. So, anything else?
Do the exteriors need to be waterproofed? There's no,
Yeah, that stucco they used is waterproof. It's sort of like a stucco-like base. It's concrete, but it's a stucco-like base, and yeah, it is waterproof. It's waterproof, fireproof, everything. Wind.
if you don't mind, I'm gonna just ask John's permission to post his email address, and I'll put it in the evaluation email that I'll send out after this webinar. So keep your eye out for that, and I'll include his email address there as long as he gives me clearance, which I'm sure he will. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Jean.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, John, even though you're not here right now. Hope everybody has a great day, and keep your eyes out for the evaluation. And if you want to come back and look at anything, we'll have it posted on YouTube here, probably in a few hours, but might be tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.